Michael Hichborn joins us right now from Lepanto Institute. Good morning to you, Michael.
Good morning, Joe. Good to see you.
Yeah, praise be to God. It's always good to see you, my friend. Hey, so someone in Milwaukee wants to break the seal of confession, and this person's a priest, or was it? Like, what? I'm scratching my head here. Help me understand. What's the story?
Well, if you figure this out, then I'll give you $100. The fact of the matter is that the former vice chancellor of the Archdiocese of Milwaukee, Father James Connell, has taken it upon himself to wage a one-man war against the sacrament of confession, saying that the seal of confession protects pedophiles, protects pederasts, child abusers, abusers of vulnerable adults, and that the state laws should be changed, and actually church teaching should be changed to allow priests to violate the seal of confession in certain situations. So if a priest hears a confession of somebody who says, yeah, I neglected my kid, or yeah, I sexually abused somebody, then the priest would be free, according to church law and according to state law, would be required to then report said abuse. And this particular priest, again, he's a canon lawyer. He's the former vice chancellor for the Archdiocese of Milwaukee. And he actually sued in 2019. He sued 10 states to say that the clergy penitent privilege is it's unconstitutional, and that those states should overturn those laws.
Wow. Now, this is a guy who was trained at seminary, should understand the theology behind the sacrament of reconciliation and why the church teaches that there must be a seal of confession here. So what really motivates him? Why would he dismiss all of that he's ever been trained to say, well, because of this abuse issue, we should therefore break the seal?
Well, and that really is kind of the crux of the question. I have to tell you, I am shocked at a lot of the comments that I've been seeing online because my article got posted by LifeSite News, by Church Militant, by several other outfits, and I've been reading the comments. And there are a lot of people who are saying, well, I don't see the problem with reporting these pedophiles. You know, I think that these pedophiles should be reported by their priests. And I'm sitting there going, who do you think this is going to hurt? Do you think this is actually going to increase the reporting system that gets these pederasts and these pedophiles into the legal system? Or do you think this is going to deter people from going to confession at all? Because that's really the end result. These abusers aren't going to go to confession if they think that their confessions are going to be revealed to the world. Of course not. And what's more is that people like me are going to look at this and say, okay, so at what point is the priest going to take it upon himself in righteous indignation to say, you know, what you said, I think I need to report that too, because you're a hypocrite, or you are whatever, whatever it is. He takes that idea and says, nah, you're a bad person and I need to report you.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope, right? When was that? It was like maybe 10 years ago. There was like a Law and Order television show episode. I don't have television. I don't watch Law and Order, but I remember watching a clip of this online where they went after this very issue as a part of their drama of that particular episode. There was a priest who had heard some confessions of another a priest, and these cops were pressuring this priest to reveal what was said in the confessional, and they basically guilted this guy into doing that. If I'm not mistaken, it's been a number of years since I've seen it, but it was along those lines. And and you're right, the world, Catholic, not Catholic, most people really can't seem to understand why this would be a problem. It seems like a good thing, Michael. Come on, man. Don't we want these abusers? Don't we want these criminals to face justice? Wouldn't it be the virtue of justice that would be able to be realized in this, that these men would be held accountable for their crimes?
That seems to be the thinking of the day, and there are a lot of well-intentioned people who seem to think that, yeah, this is how you bring about justice. You report injustice, and if this were a normal, general setting of civil authority, I would agree. But the problem is that the seal of confession, the purpose of confession, is to bring a soul to Christ, to raise a soul that was dead back to life. That is what confession does. So if the purpose of confession is to raise the dead back to life, how are you going to accomplish that if the person who is going to be raised from the dead believes that the reason that they were dead is going to be broadcast to the world? It blows the mind, because ultimately this kind of action, this desire to turn the confessional into a reporting system, is only going to deter people from going to confession at all. It is a direct attack on confession. And if I'm the devil and I'm trying to find the broadest way to prevent people from going to heaven and draw as many souls to hell as I possibly can, well, then I'm going to go after the one thing that pulls them out of my clutches, and that's the confessional. And if I'm going to do that, what I have to do is make everybody believe, well, if you go to confession, your sins are going to be broadcast. People will know what you did, and therefore they won't go. And people will remain buried in their sins. They will die in their sins. And when judgment comes, the devil will be able to claim them. That's the whole goal here. And that's why this whole situation, this Father Connell situation, ultimately is satanic.
Okay, so again, I'm still scratching my head. I expect this from the world. I don't expect this from a person who's been trained theologically. Like, they should know better. I mean, the idea here is not to cover up and protect men who have committed such heinous crimes. Trust me, no one gets out of this thing, without being held accountable. Every single person, no matter what we've done, gets held accountable. Judgment is coming. Don't kid yourself. Judgment's coming. But nonetheless, like, he just really ought to know better. So is it just that he's embraced a more liberal theology, or like, do we have any sense of like his background? Is he someone who has gone through abuse himself? I mean, like, or is he just being overly sympathetic to the cause?
So it's interesting. In 2003, when Archbishop Timothy Dolan was the Archbishop of the Archdiocese of Milwaukee, he appointed Father Connell to the Sex Abuse Review Board. And Father Connell sat on that position for, I think, all the way up till 2012 when he retired. But he, in 2009, he was accused by SNAP, the Survivors Network of people who were abused by priests. I can't remember the exact acronym, but SNAP. They accused him of covering up for a priest who had sexually abused people. And it was very shortly after that he, suddenly had a revelation of the mind that maybe he should be an advocate for victims. He'd already been on this review panel board for 6 years when he was accused by SNAP, and suddenly he has a revelation. Suddenly he has a reversal of position, and then he becomes an advocate. He went down and he held a press conference with SNAP. He actually showed up with Voice of the Faithful, which is a heretical organization, gave a speech at one of their conferences. So I don't know if it's that he had a liberal disposition to begin with, or maybe he actually was guilty of what SNAP accused him of, and he's basically doing what they call white knighting, where he becomes a champion for the people because he's actually an enemy of the people, if you get my drift.
Oh, wow. So this man is retired at this point?
Yes.
So, he still is under the authority of his bishop, no? And if so, what does his bishop say about all of this?
So here's what gets me. He's been operating under the radar since 2018 on this particular issue of attacking the seal of confession. In 2018, he wrote an article that was published in National Catholic Reporter. In 2019, he sued those 10 states. And incidentally, it was after he sued those 10 states that suddenly the majority of those same states that he sued picked up his gauntlet and have since tried to ramrod legislation through that would force priests to violate the confessional. So he did that in 2019. And in a couple of other instances, 2020, 2022, he came out and he was promoting this idea that the seal of confession should be broken. And then just last week is when he published this op-ed in USA Today.
Wow. Hold that thought. Michael Hichborn is our guest. Lepanto Institute, lepantoin.org is the website. The headline says, former vice chancellor for the Archdiocese of Milwaukee attacks the seal of confession. We're talking about this, why it is important to defend the seal of confessional, even if it means horrible crimes are being kept in the shadows. We're going to talk more about that coming up right after this break. Why would we do that? I think it's important. We're going to reiterate that coming up after the break. I'd like to know what you think, and we'll talk about that in the after show. Michael Hichborn is our guest right now. lepantoin.org is his website. The article over there says, former vice chancellor for the Archdiocese of Milwaukee attacks the seal of confession. And we're talking about sort of the worst case scenario here, right? You have a priest accused of molesting either a minor or, frankly, in my opinion, how about adults? There are way more stories of priests abusing, post-pubescent males than prepubescent children. And yet that somehow is getting a pass in all of this. But nonetheless, why would we say we must defend the seal of confession, even if it meant those men would be brought to justice? It's a powerful argument. Michael, welcome back to the show. Let me put this on the table, too. Speaking of one of our insiders, Sci-Fi Mike, who hangs out with us every single day, big fan of the show. He asked the question, he says, what about restrictions to doctor-patient confidentiality? If we're going to break the seal of confession, can't we break that one, too? Who knows what we might find? What do you say, Michael Hichborn?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's already on the table, right? They're already going after the doctor's offices and the psychologists, and they're saying that, hey, if you go to your head shrinker and your head shrinker thinks that you've committed a crime, he has an obligation to report you. That's already on the table. That's been kind of a fait accompli for the last 10 years, as far as I can tell. A lot of times, and there are some psychologists or psychiatrists who will, they'll try and resist, but a lot of times they're compelled by the force of law to reveal things that were told to them in confidence in their sessions. So, and there are some who have been charged with impeding an investigation or for withholding evidence during an investigation, simply because they refused to say what was revealed to them in a psychological session or a counseling session. But, when it comes to the seal of confession, I have to wonder, where is it going to end? Are we going to just stop at the crime of pederasty? Because it seems to me that's just simply the nose of the camel under the tent. That once they get that point of leverage in and they say, okay, we're going to go after all the pederasts, all the pedophiles who are abusing kids, because this is all about protecting children, right? Well, if it's really about protecting children, why aren't they going after the drag queen story hour? But enough about that.
Right.
This is the camel's nose under the tent. Where why stop there? Why not go after the murderers? Why not go after the thieves? Why not go after any other crime that they deem bad enough that has to be revealed by a priest in the confessional? And if they're going to do that, then the entire dam breaks and nobody's going to go to confession, because anything you say can be deemed a crime and therefore reportable to the police.
Yeah. What about a spouse confessing adultery? should the other spouse be informed of that? And could pressure be applied to priests to obtain that information, like say through a lawsuit, for instance? As a part of a divorce case.
A divorce court. In a divorce case, somebody says, well, you need to supply evidence of infidelity in order to show that your cause for divorce is valid, and therefore they go to the priest and they say, hey, did my spouse confess to infidelity in the confessional? And if so, you are now subpoenaed. You have to come to the court and you have to testify on my behalf to reveal what was said in the confessional. But this is the beauty of anonymous confession. When you go into the box and there's a veil between you and the priest doesn't see your face. The priest doesn't know your name, doesn't recognize your voice. So what exactly is the priest supposed to reveal, and how anyway? Because in a court of law, that's not a viable witness. There's no identifiable measure by which the priest could say, yes, this person came to me in confession and I know who it was, and I was able to obtain information from that person regarding this particular crime. Even in a court of law, because there was no visible or audible identification of the individual, the priest has no way of standing as a witness. And by the way, when a priest hears 50, 60, 80, 100 confessions in a day, it's like voices in a crowd. He's not going to be able to discern one confession from the other, and then it becomes an even more muddled situation. So this idea that they're going after confession, it's not about the abuse. And I can't get this through people's head hard enough. It's not about the abuse. It's not about fighting crime. It's all about attacking the confessional itself.
Now, okay, so before someone accuses you or me or whatever that we are protecting abuser priests here, we definitely want abuser priests to face justice. Right. In this life would be ideal. In the next life is going to be inevitable. They're going to face justice one way or the other, but we would love to see them face justice while they're still alive, right? Like that is our desire.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would love to see the justice system be able to believe me, there are a ton of different priests, even bishops, who are involved in terrible, terrible things. We know that the homosexual crisis within the clergy is rampant. It was Pope Benedict XVI that had a 300-page dossier just on the priests of Rome, the clergy of Rome, that were involved in a homosexual network in Rome. And it was rampant. It was a shocking report, as far as we can tell. But, hey, the fact of the matter is that confession is for bringing somebody to spiritual life. The purpose of the law, the criminal courts, is to bring someone to justice in this world. How they do that is I'm 100% in favor of gathering evidence and gathering the information to build a case against a criminal. 100% in favor of that. But you can't do that at the expense of the confessional. You cannot.
Yeah. Amen. Okay, let's talk about the bishops for a second here. We have about minute and a half left with Michael Hichborn, lepantoin.org. What about the bishops? Are they speaking out against this? I mean, bishops, I think most bishops, no matter if lukewarm or not, they know that they have to protect this seal of confession, and they generally do. What are they saying about all this?
Well, individual dioceses have actually spoken out against these legislative measures to attack the confessional. In Delaware, the Conference of Bishops in Delaware, they spoke out against it. In Vermont, same thing. But what's interesting is that the USCCB has said nothing. They talk about immigration all the time, but they won't say anything to defend the confessional. And what's even more interesting is that not a single bishop has said a word about Father Connell, which is why we're calling on people to contact the Archdiocese of Milwaukee. It's on our website. Go to the Archdiocese of Milwaukee and ask them, what are you going to do about this priest?
Amen. Well said. Go to the website, lepantoin.org. And you can find this article. At the bottom of that article is that call to action to contact the Archdiocese. There's contact information there. Most Reverend Jerome Leszecki's information is there, and others are there. lepantoin.org. We'll put a link to it in our show notes over at thestationofthecross.com/ACT. Michael Hichborn, God bless you. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for hanging out with us today. We really appreciate it.